it's time for me to provide some information in regards to the background of the narcissist. Now, I mentioned in previous audios that I was going to discuss one or more of the reasons why a narcissist is a narcissist. First of all, narcissism is a personality disorder. If you look up personality disorders, they list different types. There's dependent personality disorder. These type of people can't stand to be alone at any time. They have to be around someone. Avoidant personality disorder. These are the people who have a tendency to not want to be around people. They have very few, if any, social relationships. They're isolationists. And the narcissistic personality disorder is the personality disorder, of course, that you know where all eyes is on them. Well, there are two main reasons as to why a person becomes a narcissist, and they're both centered in their childhood. And they involve extremes. The first extreme is that they are a child that had been the focus of attention because of a parent who's given them too much adoration. They could be a so-called miracle baby that they weren't expecting to have, and the parent gives them so much attention to the point where they literally idolize the child. Or they could be the only boy in the family, or they could have been the only child for a very long period of time before anybody came along, if anyone came along, and it was to the point where anything that they wanted or anything that they needed, that parent gave it to them, but it was just over the top. Every time that person, that person is often talked about. They're often placed in the spotlight at a very, very early age because they have a parent or a guardian that just put way too much attention on them. Now, of course, children are required to have a certain amount of attention when they're small because that's the natural order. But this goes above natural order to the point where they are literally idolized by their parent or guardian. So that creates a false sense of importance inside of them that most of them carry throughout their entire lives because they feel if the parent treats them that way, that the rest of the world should treat them that way. That's the first extreme, and that's the most common one. The second extreme is a person who has been neglected, totally neglected, abandoned, totally neglected. They might not have had any parental attention at all. They could have been a ward of the court. They could have been raised in orphanages. They could have had no contact with anybody. They have no idea where they came from. They've been dismissed and ignored. I mean, they went through the system, but it wasn't a good experience for them. They didn't have any mentorship. They had nothing. They had no kind of attention whatsoever. They were devoid of a close relationship. And because of the lack of a close relationship, they had to try to build themselves up to a level where they feel that they don't need anybody because they didn't have anybody. So by the time they become adults, they have no concept of what a close relationship is because they had to depend on themselves. So when they do get involved in relationships, it's very difficult to deal with them because they never had any type of close relationship at all, and everything has to be about them. So those are two extremes in regards to narcissism. I'm sure you probably know of someone who does that, but I wanted to give an idea as to what the cause is. Because a lot of personality disorders, the majority of them come from some sort of childhood experience, whether it's a trauma or whether it's just a type of parental guidance, a way they were raised, their environment, something in their childhood, because personality develops in childhood. And unfortunately, in the case of a lot of these people, that's why when they are grown and, people identify that they have this disorder, it's very hard for them to even admit that they have a problem because they grew up this way. They were programmed to be this way. And more than likely, a lot of narcissists do not go to therapy because they don't feel they need to. And they will use their background as a defense if they speak of their background at all, because a lot of them don't. And if they do speak about their background, it's a distorted view of what it is. and give you an idea. Let's say you know someone who was in the public sector, okay? They're in the public eye, and because a lot of narcissists, they're not quiet people anyway. They're going to be in some form of leadership, some way, form, or fashion, because they have to have attention on them. And let's say they have an interview with a magazine or something like that, and they ask them about their background. They'll cherry pick parts of their background, and all the parts are great. All of the parts are great. Their parents were wonderful, house was wonderful, everything was wonderful, everything was perfect. Nothing was ever wrong. And if they did anything wrong, they diminish it to the fact that they diminish it to the point where they make it seem like it's trivial. That is, if it's brought up in conversation. If it's not, they won't. So they do that to give the impression that they're perfect because they don't want any negative light shed on them. But the truth of the matter is, there is someone in their life who knows the truth, and usually don't have a close relationship with that person, if they acknowledge that person at all, because they're afraid that person is going to come out against them. So I just wanted to give you a background as to how narcissists operate and where they come from, because I know a lot of people talk about, oh, this person's a narcissist and they act like this, that, and the other, but I just wanted to give you two of the main reasons why they act like that, and they both center on how they're treated in their childhood. They either get too much attention or no attention at all. There's no moderation. And because there's no moderation in their childhood, they have no idea what moderation is when they're adult. So it'll be very, very hard, if possible, to even get these people to even consider therapy because they don't think anything's wrong with them. Majority of them don't go to therapy. If they do, it's for an ulterior motive. They do it because they have a hidden agenda, something to promote their business, something to promote their reputation, but not in the space of healing. And they only do it just long enough to get whatever they need to get, and then they're done with it because they don't think anything